This conference will now be recorded.
As we try to look at in an Indian perspective, we need to understand that we need to understand these technologies and actually build these technologies. Unfortunately, most of the technologies that I've mentioned, if you talk about Internet of Things, if you talk about cloud computing, if you talk about big data, if you talk about quantum, none of the software that is being used is developed in India. You talk about security itself, I think one saving grace is Quick Heal. We have an antivirus which is developed in India and by Indians. Of course, many of the softwares are made by Indians, but they are working abroad for other countries and other companies. We don't have Indian companies and this thing. So the challenge here for all of you, I think there are about 75 of you here. So the challenge is, can we take this challenge of trying to understand blockchain and try to build a mechanism like that? One of the fear that most of us have is, or one of the approach that we try to use is, we would like to take the easier way out or the easier path out for this thing. So we don't want to actually try to look at these challenging things. We would like to look at what is easy. So most of you may be aware of cryptography, but you are very much wanting not to do anything about cryptography, right? So we want to do the easier parts of the network security or cyber security, right? But let us take it as a challenge. Nothing is impossible and nothing is difficult. So as we try to understand, it's very important, because I think few governments like Japan, they have kind of made blockchain or Bitcoin a legal tender. Legal tender, you must be remembering demonetization times, where rupees 1,000 rupee note has been demonetized, right? So it is not a legal tender, they said. What is a legal tender now? 500 rupee note is a legal tender. 2,000 rupee note is a legal tender. Legal tender in the sense it is recognized and it is authorized for use in the country. If you take a 1,000 rupee note out now, you will be arrested, because all the 1,000 rupee notes were supposed to be surrendered, right? So that was the idea that we tried to look at, and then here you are, we have reached that situation, right? So but then Bitcoin is not a legal tender in India. It is not illegal as well, don't worry about it. It is not illegal, but you can buy and sell Bitcoins, but it is not a legal tender as well. So hence, why if you ask me why Indian government is not able to make it a legal tender, the challenge is that because we are not able to really run behind or support the background behind. If somebody steals Bitcoins, if somebody changes or makes some or launches some attacks, and these things we are not able to handle. We, in the sense, Indian community, maybe ethical hackers, maybe cyber security specialists, maybe forensic investigators, maybe academicians like us, teachers and researchers. We are doing a lot of research, and we share a lot of these thoughts. But we are, unfortunately, we are nowhere in that way to handle this part. So that's where we tend to look at some of these things that I would like to share with you. So let me share my screen, and let me start off with this aspect of just getting used to GoToMeeting. First time I'm using it. Of course, I have attended few meetings, but I've not shared session using this, right? So this is something here. Okay, and now I should make it full screen. Yeah, this is fine. And now I would like to look at where I am right here. Okay. Okay. So I'm not able to see myself also, right?
Yes, sir. But we are able to see you, sir.
Yeah, I understand. But it will be very difficult, right? Yeah, let me just.
Yes, sir. Due to the restrictions, sir, like we didn't have any other platform, because the participants actually registered were around more than 100. and this was the only platform which was.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Yeah. The screen is visible, right? So I'll speak to my slides. So that's okay. No problem. Yeah, just getting used to the environment. So please don't worry about it. I'll just get adjusted, right? So these are some of the words that we tend to hear: digital finance, transaction, cryptocurrency, blockchain, Bitcoin, protocol, smart contracts, right? The another word is contract, right? Cryptocurrency, then a lot of these words, right? So if you look at the Bitcoin is the first blockchain based cryptocurrency. It started with a paper. It was a paper. This you can go and download from Google. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. I will share as well. I will share to Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, and then I think he will shortly share it with you. So it's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system by Satoshi Nakamoto, but we don't know whether Satoshi Nakamoto exists because it's a name which was given, and we don't know who he is, right? But he created the first block in the blockchain. So we'll try to understand what is a block and what is a blockchain shortly. So this is how it started. 2008 and 2009, the first paper came into picture, right? So a few points. This thing on the day of its launch, Coinbase, the first block, right? Times of London carried a story, right, which says Chancellor bailing out banks, Bitcoin's libertarian roots. So in fact, what you're trying to look at is Bitcoin came in to avoid the banking system. I don't want to use the banking system. That is what is the basic idea that we tend to use, we tend to see, right? So, okay, the last part is getting cut here below. Are you able to see the transaction? They are able to see this thing. Can somebody answer?
No,
are
sir.
you able to see this part? No? Yeah, I think this is getting cut, right? Okay. Can I increase the size? How do I increase the size?
Just switch back to normal screen from full screen.
Okay. Yeah, I think whatever is shown on the screen here, right? GoToMeeting is being shown, right? Below you are able to see fee is 0. Are you able to see? From amount, are you able to see generation 50 plus 0?
No, sir.
No. Right. So I think how do I increase the size of my presentation? Is one thing. Okay. Yeah. Are you able to see this part now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm able to see this, sir.
Yeah, this part you are able to see, but when I'm using the full screen, you are not able to see that, right? So that's something which we can try to. Yeah,
Yes,
whenever
sir.
there is a problem, I'll come back to this, right? So please see that there are 50 coins which are generated. This is the first block 0, which is called the Genesis block. So these are some of the things. So just remember that 50 bitcoins are given as a reward, right? And then you have the other statistics here. So let me go back to this. Yeah, so here you have the next block, the address that is supposed to be there, and then you have the time it was created, timestamp is there, and the transaction, only one transaction. Total bitcoins that were gifted or rewarded was 50. So we will try to understand what it means, right? So a few points about Bitcoin. Last year, about 1 lakh merchants have started accepting Bitcoin as a payment, and Bitcoin is based on solving an encryption formula. This is what we will try to understand. It's called the mining algorithm, right? So we will solve. So there are so many people called miners who are working Bitcoin. We'll try to understand who are miners also, right? You solve an encryption formula. This is where a lot of computer science comes in. It's not a financial market about Bitcoin, but it is a computer science market. Actually, it is an encryption formula, and it requires extreme amounts of computing power to solve that encryption formula. So each time you solve the formula, you earn some bitcoins. So that's the logic that was developed. And the beautiful point, as I was talking about, that there is this libertarian roots, is because there is nobody behind this. Who is the agent? Who is the agency? Who is the organization behind Bitcoin? There is no organization. We don't know who it is, right? But it is working fine. and it has a lot of credibility. What is the credibility? Anything that you store on the blockchain cannot be changed. So that's something which is enormously beautiful, which has come in, right? So about 80% of the Bitcoins have been mined. So let's go ahead. So Bitcoin has denominations also. Bitcoin can be broken into milli Bitcoins, 1000 milli Bitcoins, or maybe 10 lakh micro Bitcoins, or even more than that, Satoshis, right? So mostly the Bitcoin transactions are made in Satoshis, right? So if you want to get some Bitcoins, how do you do it, right? So it is, you can go to a Bitcoin exchange. You can go to a Bitcoin exchange and then, right? So you either you can buy it from a Bitcoin exchange by paying fiat currency, that is rupees or dollars, and you can buy some Bitcoins. If your friend has a Bitcoin, you can transfer it to your Bitcoin address. You create a Bitcoin address, like it is like your Google Pay wallet, or it is like your Paytm wallet. You create a Bitcoin wallet, and you share the address, like how you have your bank account number. You tell your friend, please send to this bank account. Like that, similarly, you will send, please send the Bitcoins to this Bitcoin address. So your friend has his own Bitcoin address. Once he knows your Bitcoin address, he will be able to transfer some Bitcoins to your Bitcoin address. So you will have some Bitcoins transferred. The other one, the last option is mine a Bitcoin block. So create a block, then you will get the Bitcoins, right? Earlier it was 50 Bitcoins was to come whenever you are adding a block. Now it is 6.25 Bitcoins. So we'll see what is this halving. Halving is done every 4 years, and then first it was $50, then it became $25 halving, then halving it was $12.5, then it became $6.25, right? So, and then what is the hash rate that you need to mine? The hash rate is 114 million terahashes per second. Terahashes, terabytes, so terahashes, that many number of hashes, and 114 million terahashes is the speed at which you need to solve the encryption algorithm. Then you can add a block. So you need huge resources. But then as we look at, it's also very rewarding, because if you look at six Bitcoins given as a reward, and if each Bitcoin is like some 35 lakh rupees, just imagine adding one block, you're going to get some 2 crore rupees, right? So that's the kind of amount. So in one month, even if you are going to add 5 blocks, right, you're going to get 10 crore rupees. So that's huge amount of money, right? And then the huge resource, you'll have to put up servers, you'll have to put up programmers, and then you'll have to provide huge electricity, because the programming can only be solved when huge computing resources is required, 114 tera hashes per second, and it is reduced actually now. And it's a measure of how many times the Bitcoin network can attempt to solve proof of work puzzle. So what is the mining algorithm? The mining algorithm is called proof of work puzzle. There is another alternative mechanism, alternative mining algorithm which has come. It is called the proof of stake puzzle, POS. Right? And then I was looking at how many algorithms may be there. So I just went to Wikipedia and typed and searched mining algorithms. It showed me some 30-40 mining algorithms. So different, in fact, cryptocurrencies, there's so many cryptocurrencies. You can at least see about 20-30 cryptocurrencies in Wikipedia. Just go and search what are the cryptocurrencies. Obviously, first it will show Ethereum and blockchain and Bitcoin and Monero and other things, but there are so many other blockchains which are coming in, and so many other cryptocurrency which is coming in, right? So the more hashing power in the network, the greater its security. So more hashing power in the network means different people having equal levels of power, then there's no problem. Power means the computing power or the hashing power. The moment somebody has more power than all others, then he will be able to take over the blockchain. So that's something which is in fact, recently we were doing a workshop on quantum computing. We were hosting it. It was a faculty development program. More than about 100 people were participating in that and learning about quantum computing. In that, the question was there: can blockchain problem be solved using quantum computers? Yes. Once the quantum computing resources do come in as a realizable aspect, then if you apply it to blockchain, then you can take over. But of course, obviously, when one person is trying to take over the blockchain, the others will buy the same quantum computing equipment and then improve their mechanism. We will see various alternatives that were used also shortly. So Bitcoin hash rate is presently 114 million terahashes, but it was at one point of time 180 million terahashes per second in May 21. Now it is reduced. Why it was? It was reduced because there's a mining ban by China. Mining ban means China is not allowing mining to start. They said we will not give you that much of electricity, because huge amounts of electricity is going into this blockchain mechanism, trying to solve and earn the money. So once you earn the money, obviously you have to invest a lot of power or electricity into it because of huge computing requirements, right? So what is happening? Chinese power is being dragged. So hence they felt that okay, let's ban mining. So these are some aspects that you can try to look at, right? So Bitcoin rewards I was talking about. So 2009, people earned 50 Bitcoins. The first block was added. He got 50 Bitcoins. In 2012, so roughly around 4 years, it became 25 Bitcoins. And in July, it became 12.5 Bitcoins. And in May 2020, it became 6.25 Bitcoins. Now, what is a Bitcoin? Bitcoin, or what is a blockchain? Blockchain is usually called a public ledger. Now, ledger is a word which you would have used, right? Ledger you would have used when you would have gone into any bank. You would have seen a ledger. Of course, most of you would not have seen those ledgers. Maybe people who have used banking some 15 years ago, you will know when you had to update your passbook, when you went to deposit money and draw money, you would stand in a line, and when you go to the line, and then he will say, okay, tell me your bank account number. Then he will open a big book, right, and open the book, and then anyway the account numbers are sorted in ascending order. So he opens the account and then opens your page and makes entries, and then makes entries in your this thing. Now because everything is automated, now you have a database in which you are entering the account details and all. So you open your own ledger. So how can you see your banking ledger now? All by yourself, and you can make all the transactions. You don't have to go to the bank also. You can make all the transactions sitting on your laptop or your mobile phone. How do you do that? You log into your internet banking account or internet banking app, and the app shows your ledger. So here, what is a blockchain? Blockchain is also a ledger like that. Oh, is that all? Oh, it's so simple. I understand. Now, when you try to look at this blockchain ledger is a public ledger. What is meant by public ledger? Just imagine you have a bank account with ICICI or HDFC or any SBI or any other bank, and let us say the bank says now all our accounts are public, anybody can see, no problem, right? But nobody can make changes. It is open, but nobody can make changes. Anybody can view. So maybe you will not be happy, right? You will not be happy to see that somebody else is seeing your bank account details, what transactions are being made, what you are buying, and all that, right? So you would not like that. But Bitcoin makes it everything public. Why? Because you know what are the transactions, but you don't know who made the transactions. So that is why it's a public ledger also, and at the same time it is a private also. In the sense, it is nobody can know who he is. At least in IP addresses, you'll be able to trace to the location, you'll be able to trace to the organization, and you can find out, okay, you know that, okay, somebody like this is there, or somebody like that is there, or maybe this organization, one employee may be the person here. But in the case of blockchain address, you don't know. It is usually a 35-bit digital address, and then a digital value, and then you don't know. So this is how a public ledger looks like. You can go to websites like these things where I see Blockchain Info and blockchainexplorer.com. These two websites you can go, and you can see this, right? So you have the Bitcoin number. The latest block, of course, this is not the latest block. This is somewhere in August 2020. So just a snapshot we took from somewhere. So this is what is the block number, and this is the person or the miner. So miners earlier were individuals who were doing it, but now they are pooling themselves, right? They are creating pools. How they are creating pools? They are coming together, and they are all joining as a group, and they are becoming a pool or a syndicate or a senate, something like that. They are all coming together and then forming a corporation, forming a committee, or forming a team, syndicate, and then they are working as a pool. So they are called mining pools, right? And the number of transactions, so the mining transactions that are there, Bitcoins are transferred here and there, all those transactions are listed. Then the size of these transactions, how much is the block size that can be there. And then there are some transactions which are charged. Earlier, all the transactions were never charged. All the transactions were free. Later, they realized that Bitcoin won't survive for long because all the Bitcoins will be blocked. After that, only Bitcoins can be transferred from one place to other place. So now what will be the interest for the miners? The interest of the miners will be this transaction fee. Then we see that, okay, the mining reward is there. Once a block is added, a mining reward is issued. The time at which the block is mined is listed here, right? So this is how the latest blocks, well, a few minutes ago, this slide as you look at. So this is the latest block that is coming up few minutes ago, and then these are the, of course, some of the things are not known because after some time only these things get updated. Anyway, who has owned the block? But roughly in 1 hour, if you see, some 6 to 7 blocks are roughly 10 minutes is what has to be maintained. So over a period of 2-3 hours, you will have some 16 to 18 blocks being added, right? So in a day, roughly some what do you get, 24 into 6, right? So maybe some 120 blocks are added in a day. Every day, some 120 blocks are added. So last 10 years, you have come almost to 6 lakh, or now roughly 7 lakh blocks get added. So this is how it is. So this is what. So now, how does a ledger look like? So please understand, please remember these words, because if you understand a mining algorithm, you need to understand these things. What is the thing? First is what do you say? The hash value of that. It has some 19 preceding zeros, or sometimes 20 preceding zeros, depending on the difficulty of the mining. Now I will tell you what is this difficulty level shortly. So first thing is you have a block hash, right? Some 19 preceding zeros are there, right? Then hash of the previous block, which also has 19 preceding zeros. Anyway, next block is not of importance immediately. Then there is Merkle root, right? So what is Merkle root? Merkle root is transactions are all arranged in a data structure called Merkle tree, and the hash of its root is called the Merkle root. So you arrange all the transactions. Where how many transactions are there? Here 604 transactions are there. 604 transactions are arranged as a Merkle tree. There is a hash of its root, which is called the Merkle root. Of course, it is beyond the scope of my lecture here to explain what is Merkle root. I will briefly introduce Merkle root shortly, but then please read what is Merkle root, what is hash, right? Some of them maybe you are new, but others, those who are in computer science and they have this idea, you can try to pick up. And nonce is any random number here. This nonce is any random number, right? Difficulty is mentioned here, right? So what we are trying to do is, what we need is the present hash. This hash has to be created. Okay, this hash has to be created, which is same here, right? This is the hash that has to be created. 7D5308, right? 7D5308. This is the same block hash here. This is the same. This has to be calculated. If you want to add a block, you have to calculate the block hash, which is dependent on the previous block hash. Previous block hash, the present Merkle root of the transactions, the Merkle root of the transactions, and a nonce value. So you get the transactions, you create the Merkle tree, you get the Merkle root, you know the previous block hash value, and then you calculate the new block. So this will actually give you a new block, right? So that is how it is. So if you look at when you are making transactions in the ledger, this will be the transaction hash, right? And then these are the addresses in which you are sending the bitcoins. These are the amounts which are being done, and these are the addresses which are being received. Now a transaction looks like this, right? A transaction is few addresses, few amounts sending to some addresses and some amount, right? These amount and this amount will be same plus the transaction fee, right? So these amounts plus transaction fee is equal to sum of these amounts, right? So that is a transaction in a Bitcoin ledger. So Bitcoin is, I will slowly introduce some of these words shortly. So first Bitcoin transfer was from Satoshi to his friend Hal Finney. We don't know who Hal Finney is and who Satoshi is, but anyway, these were there. Then later somebody purchased $25 worth of pizza for 10,000 bitcoins. So 10,000 bitcoins at one point of time was $25 in 2010. But now the number of the amount is too huge for the Bitcoin. One Bitcoin is running into few thousands of dollars, right? Some $4,000 or something, right? Then a Bitcoin exchange was created called Mt. Gox. So later it lost, a lot of Bitcoins were stolen, and then it became bankrupt. So these are some stories you can just read through. Then Bitcoin became also very popular. In fact, first time when you heard Bitcoin, the word, maybe it was related to an attack, right? The attack was WannaCry. If WannaCry, what it does was it encrypted all the systems that it came on. So wherever the virus went or wherever that worm went, it took over that WannaCry. Okay, it was kind of spyware or what you call adware. It came into the system and then it encrypted the system. So if somebody wanted to decrypt the system, because huge data is there, you don't want to lose the data, so you decrypt the data. You want to decrypt the data, then they said you have to pay so many bitcoins. Why they had used bitcoins? Why they did not use so many dollars? Bitcoins cannot be tracked. If you pay in dollars, you know where the dollars is going. You know, an account it goes, and from the account somebody has to draw the money. Then you will be able to track him. So it will be easy. But if it goes on bitcoins, you cannot track it. So why bitcoins became famous, popular? Another reason is the kind of black market that you can think about. So there's something called Silk Road earlier. Silk Road was a route which was created earlier, where you know, the eastern countries would send silk, which was manufactured, and it was sent to the western countries. Huge money would come back because of the silk. So there was a route starting from India and other countries in the east, going towards the west, connecting towards till Europe, going by by camels and by different animals. It used to go slowly. So that was called a Silk Road. So now the Silk Road, you know, was an eBay of drugs, or eBay of pornography, or eBay of what you call some of these ammunition, guns, pistols, and all that could be sold, right? So this is something unfortunate. But then in 2013, FBI shut down the Silk Road. So as I told you, 2017 we see that Bitcoin was 13 lakhs, right? And now in 2021 August it is 35 lakhs, right? Sometime in April it was 42 lakhs also, right? So you can see here, if you take last 1 year's data, here you see somewhere, you know, this is April 2021. It roughly moved to something like more than $60,000, right? One Bitcoin was roughly $60,000, which is 46 lakhs. One Bitcoin was 46 lakhs. Maybe presently it is roughly 34, 35 lakhs, or maybe 30, more than 30 lakhs definitely. One Bitcoin, right? Considered as digital gold, right? So this is what is happening, right? So the investment in Bitcoin, a lot of institutions, MicroStrategy, Square, Grayscale, Tesla, JP Morgan, they all are investing in Bitcoin, and hence this was done. So a lot of people, and maybe tomorrow MasterCard will allow customers to use cryptocurrencies as payment methods. So cryptocurrencies are getting accepted slowly, and hence as Indians we must not stay behind. Of course, maybe to invest 35 lakhs may be a big issue. Okay, maybe at least we should try to at least access some Bitcoins, create a Bitcoin wallet, maybe invest 10,000 rupees, buy few Satoshis, and store it in a Bitcoin. So I understand how the process is and how it goes, right? So that is something you can get. The alternate coins, Ethereum, as I told you, Litecoin, Zcash, Ripple, Dash, and our own Desi Lakshmi coin. Of course, not very popular, but it was introduced, and surprisingly, it was introduced in Jaipur, from where I belong, right, Rajasthan. So I was surprised in a big auditorium in Jaipur. It was released. But I've not heard much after that about Lakshmi coin. But of course, it may be popular with the people. I personally have only academic interest, not financial interest, and hence I am not aware of these things, right? So these are some top crypto coins in the market. So these are various crypto coins, as you see. So these are, of course, you can just go to Google and see what are the top cryptocurrencies in the market, or Wikipedia, and you'll get all of these, right? So some of these things. So why does Bitcoin matter? It is the first ever cryptocurrency, purely digital. The main important aspect is not controlled by a central entity. If your 2,000 rupee note gets torn or cut to the half, what can happen? You can go and give it to the RBI, and RBI will give you a new note. If you have both the parts of the note, you take the note and give it to RBI, even if it is torn into half or even it's cut to some extent, they will give you a new note, because they value that note. Though it is torn, it is still a note. So if you had the 2,000 rupee note, then you had the money, it was torn by mistake. So they will take the torn copy, the fata hua copy, and then give you a new one, right? So there's a central agency, central entity which will back. Your money is not lost, right? But then Bitcoin doesn't have an agency which backs it. Central entity is not there. A peer-to-peer network in which transactions directly between users, no intermediary is there, right? Transactions are verified by network users. Now, beautiful thing, if somebody makes a transaction, somebody adds a block, it is not immediately considered that the block is added. The block has to be verified by peers, right? And then the transactions are recorded in the block as a public ledger called blockchain. So what is a blockchain? It is a method of storing data among multiple parties that ensure data integrity. So a lot of people are maintaining the blockchain. That's what I would like to say. It's a distributed ledger. It's a shared database where everybody holds a copy of the entire log history of transactions. It is immutable. Nobody can make any change, and it is timestamped. All the every block that is added is timestamped, right? And hence it continues like that, right? So that is something that you can look at. So everybody holds a copy of the entire log history of transactions. Now, this is something which we did when we set up our own Bitcoin core. That is the node, one node. If you want to connect to the blockchain, how do you connect to the blockchain? You set up a node called Bitcoin core. It's a software. You download the software, you install the software, and then you download the latest copy of the blockchain. Till date, how many blocks are created? All the blocks, all the transaction, all the information comes to you. So now you are in a position, you can become a miner by trying to add the new block, because you know the present block, and then you can access the transactions which have not been added to the blockchain, right? So you can try to create. So at least by downloading the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin core, that software, once you set it up, you create a node, you connect to the blockchain. Once you connect to the blockchain, you download the entire database of the entire blockchain. So roughly now about 700 GB of data. If you look at it, all the some 7 lakh odd blocks, roughly around 700 GB of data comes in, right? And then you can download that, and then you can look at doing that this thing. But then none of the transactions can be changed. Whatever has been logged has been logged, because everybody holds a copy of the entire log chain. So if you want to make one change, you have to change all the things, right? Like it's like WhatsApp. You send a message, right? For some minutes, you can try to delete all the things, but everybody knows that you send the message, right? Here, even you cannot delete the message. Once the block has been added and the block has been verified by 7 people, nothing can be done. And it becomes final. And once it becomes final, nobody can change it. It cannot change for any point of view, because you can change it in your private blockchain, in your account, right? But it won't get reflected in others' account. You can delete your file from your own WhatsApp account any point of time. But deleting file in your account doesn't mean that others can be others files which you already sent, that file has reached all of them, their files will continue to be holding. So that is something that we can look at. Now let me introduce some of the concepts of blockchain. So first is one is what is called hash, and second one is how the transactions look like and how the transactions are there. This we have already discussed, right? So the hash of the transaction is maintained. There is an address, there is the amount, there are the addresses, there are the amounts, and there is a transaction fee, right? So all these are part of the transaction. So let me just, before I show you a demo of how the blockchain looks like, the blockchain concepts with a transaction. So in a Bitcoin transaction, each input spends the Bitcoins paid to a previous output. So there is something which is called unspent transaction output, UTXO, right? So each input spends a previous output. The main part of the transaction, 0 input output. So this output spends this input. So it's called, each output waits an unspent transaction output until a later input spends it, right? The output here is spent to this input. So the transaction 0 and transaction 0's output is spent by transaction 1's input, right? So this becomes the input sends a previous output. So you have what is called a UTXO. So there is a data set which is called UTXO. So whenever you want to spend Bitcoins, a transaction is created by her, transaction is sent to her immediate peers, transaction is verified, and if it is validated, it is sent to their neighboring peers, and transaction is broadcasted to the entire P2P network. It is in the block, and the block gets broadcasted, hence all the transactions get broadcasted. So there are 2 databases. One is, as we have said, unspent transaction output, UTXO set, a file that contains all the spendable output that are available to be spent in a transaction. So that is one thing. The second thing is mempool. Mempool is another database, which is a file that contains transactions which are received by peer nodes but are yet to be included in any block, called unconfirmed transactions. So the file that contains transactions which are received by peer nodes but are yet to be included in any block. Those are called unconfirmed transactions. So these two data sets are now about 700 GB of data. You can obviously do a big data problem on blockchain, right? So you can run some machine learning algorithms, you can do some pattern analysis, you can do some machine learning, you can also do deep learning, and all of these two data sets can be downloaded. So once you set up a Bitcoin core, you connect to the blockchain and then download the entire UTXO set and mempool set, and then of course mempool is only there when the transactions are coming. When the transactions are added to the block, again the mempool becomes 0. Again transactions keep coming, then again you take those transactions, add it to a block, then again the mempool becomes 0, then again transactions keep coming. So this is how this process goes on. So these data sets are getting updated every now and then, right? So blockchain looks like this. So let me take you to a demo. Let me stop here and take you to a demo, and I'll give you maybe 5 minutes for you to go through this demo. So screen sharing is now passed. So 1 minute. Where do I go? So the into button is stop screen sharing, right? Or are you leaving the meeting? So how do I stop the screen sharing? This one, stop screen sharing. Right. So what we are trying to look at here is now the website I want to share, right? So share screen, share screen. Yeah. Are you able to see the blockchain demo?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Kindly note this address: andersbrownworth.com/blockchain. You're able to see this address also, right? Do we have a chat somewhere here? Where is the chat option? Is there some chat mechanism here?
Yes, sir.
No? Where do I find it? This is chat, right? Okay. Message. Yeah, I have sent that link. Maybe some of you can open that link while you are free. You can look at that. Right? Yeah. So this is the hash. So here, of course, there is some hash value which is created from here. Maybe some space is there or something. Now just see, as I type my name, let us say I see. Notice this hash value here. Okay, are you able to notice this E3B0? Now just see if I type P, it changes. Right? As I keep on typing every character, the hash value is changing. Right? Okay. So this is what is hash, and of course, please read through. And there are various hashing algorithms. So here, the hashing algorithm that is being used in blockchain is SHA-256, secured hash algorithm, 256 bit. So that is what is being used. Now, where is it being used in the hash? So that is what this hash value is being used in what is called a block. Right. The next one is a block. So how does a block look like? This is how a block looks like. Right. There is a block number. There is a nonce. I told you what a nonce is. Nonce is to be calculated, right? There will be some transactions here, and there is a hash value, right? So the hash value here will have some 4 zeros at the beginning, right? Here there are 4 zeros at the beginning, right? There in the actual blockchain, it is 19 preceding zeros, right? But the mining algorithm will become too difficult. It will almost be like the blockchain kind of resources will be needed, and hence here we have kept only four zeros at the beginning. The person Anders Brown Worth, he did it. So he has created an emulated version. It's available on GitHub. You can download it, set up, and try to run it and see it. Of course, on the emulation, you can see it on the website here. I have shared it on that, so you can open this website and see it, right? So here, when I add, let us say, some transaction, right, from let us say Anil, and I'm trying to send this money, let us say, to some Gitu, okay, and then some $100, something like this is a kind of a transaction, right? So what has happened? This color has changed suddenly. What is the color has changed? Because this is not the target value. Target value should have preceding 0, so there must be 4 zeros. So what I should do now, these transactions, I create a Merkle tree, and that Merkle tree and the previous hash value is not yet there anyway. Now let us try to calculate the hash value. If I enter some text, I calculate then I mine it in the sense. So if I mine it, what has happened? The first 4 should be zeros. Here in this case, the first 5 are zeros. Why? Because the nonce has changed, right? So this is what a block is. Now if you go to the blockchain, now when it goes to the blockchain will be the first block, second block. So here you see the first block will not have any previous address. This will have a hash address, and this hash address has to be matching with this address. This previous address 1578, here also 1578, right? So these two addresses, and these two addresses will match. Okay, 12FA and 12FA. So these are the nonce values. And let us say if I add any transaction here, right? Let us say some $100, right? So what has happened? So immediately all this gets in there. So hence you cannot make any changes in between, right? So that is what is immutable. If I want to make this change in between, so I have to mine this. It should become zeros. Then I should, now this value is already come here. Automatically it has come, right? Now this value will change now, and this will get this value will change, and this value will get automatically reflected here. Now it is 8FC6. Now you keep watching this 8FC6 while I mine this. This will be changed because the nonce value will change. Nonce value has changed, this value has changed, and here this value has changed, right? So again mining this, so again this value will change, the nonce will change. Nonce has changed, this value. So this is so if I want to make any change in the blockchain, I have to make changes in all the blocks preceding it and also in all the chains, because blockchain is not maintained by single person, but it is maintained by everybody. So let us say here I am showing 3 because I am simulating it. I cannot show more, but there are a few hundreds and thousands of nodes which are there, right? So they are distributed across. So it is a peer. So now what happens now? Let us say here I want to make a change. So I make the change here or somewhere, maybe let us say here I make a change. Is giving some $100, right? Let us say something. I just put a transaction like thing here, right? This has become. So now all these are there. So I will mine it. No problem. And then I will mine this also. Okay, the blockchain is good now, right? But what has happened? The blockchain is not correspondingly matching with this, right? You see this? What is here is the hash value that is calculated is 8E7D, but here it is not 8E7D. Here also it is not 8E7D, and hence these two are out of sync with this, and hence this will not be accepted. Many people, when they look at these, most of the things will have same value, and if you make a private change here, so it will be only private, it will only be here. So you may have sorted out all these problems, but then these won't agree, and hence it is a distributed one, right? Then if you look at the tokens aspect, the tokens aspect is the transactions that I was trying to make, right? The transactions are looking like this. Is transactions, all the transactions, you take the Merkle tree, take the nonce value, you take the previous hash value, create the new hash. The previous value is coming from here. The nonce is coming from here. Nonce is what has to be calculated. The transactions are coming from the users. From you get Merkle tree. The other previous hash value, you calculate the nonce value, and then you get the new hash value, right? There means initially whoever creates, let us say Andres created, he gets the $1. So whoever adds a block, he gets the Coinbase. Coinbase is the reward that blockchain gives. So please go through this this thing demo, and hopefully you can use it, right? So that is something that you can use it, right? So I will stop my screen sharing. So I'll give you 5 minutes till 10:30. So please browse through that website and just see. And if you have any doubts in the previous these things, you can ask. Just give me 5 minutes. So I'm giving you 5 minutes. You also give me 5 minutes. So I'll just I have some small thing to do. I will do that, and then I will join back at 10:30. Right. So please go through that website. I will. Sorry, I continue to share the website, I think, and then you can look at that. After 5 minutes, we'll continue the lecture. I think, did I close that? Here it is. Yeah. Let me share this screen again. Yeah, you can look at these things slowly, and then you can make the transaction, right? I'll just join you till 10:30. I'll give you to explore these things so that you understand better, and then we can take it further, right? Yeah. Do you have any doubts till here? Because we will go into the security aspects. Of course, we were discussing security aspects in one sense, in the sense that we were doing what you call the cryptography part, the hashing, and then Merkle tree, and all this is also kind of security aspects that we tend to study. So if we are done, then I'll try to go back to my slides. Right. So we have studied what is a blockchain concept. So we have seen the block header is there, then transaction list is there. So each block is linked to its previous block by a link, making it a chain of blocks, right? So each block contains a cryptographic hash of the previous block, a timestamp, and a transaction. So previous block hash, the Merkle root, and the nonce. Combine them together, get a new hash value, right? So previous block hash, Merkle root, and nonce. If you create a hash of that, you get the hash of the block ID, right? So the block will have a previous hash, nonce, and list of transactions. These transactions will result in Merkle tree, nonce, and previous hash will give you the new hash value, and they're all combined together to become blockchain, right? So blockchain is immutable, as any change in the previously accepted transaction will cause a change in the hash of subsequent blocks. That is what we have seen, right? If I make some transaction change here, I have to make a change here, then I have to make a change here, then I have to make a change here. So it's an avalanche effect which happens, right? Now I told you I will introduce Merkle root. Merkle root combines the hash values of the transactions together until there is a singular root, or called a Merkle tree, root, Merkle tree hash or Merkle tree hash root, right? So it summarizes transactions in a block, verifies the presence of a transaction in a block, provides immutability of transactions. Immutability, you cannot change the transactions. Since the Merkle root hash will not match if a change is made to any transaction. If a change is made to one transaction, the Merkle root hash does not match. If the Merkle root hash does not match, the the transaction does not match. So Merkle tree hash looks like this. Maybe some part of the data is cut here. Data 0, data 1, data 2, data 3. So there are different transactions, maybe transaction 1, transaction 2, like that. Each of the transaction you create a hash, then you combine these two transactions into a new hash, combine these into a new hash, like that, and finally you get a single hash. Let us say you start with 10, 10 becomes 4, 4 becomes 2, 2 becomes 1, something like that, right? So many transactions, and then you slowly come to the hash. So finally you get the root value. This is called the Merkle. So Merkle root is calculated based on all the transactions. If one of these transactions changes, the Merkle root changes, and so that is the advantage here. So these concepts we have already seen. So if we add a new block, miners need to verify it by solving a computationally difficult proof of work puzzle. It involves brute force computations, which spend resources, and proof of work actually scans for a value called the nonce that, when hashed, results in a hash beginning with a certain number of zeros, right? So that is what is mining. We have already seen that. So if any change in the transactions, you will get an avalanche effect, right? Because a slight change will cause a significant input change. How does that happen? Change in the data in a transaction results in the change in the hash of a transaction, changes in the hash of the block, change in the hash of the next block, and so on. So it's a big avalanche effect that comes in, right? So you can't change. So once you make a transaction change here, then the remaining blocks also require remining. It is not possible. So if you want to do mining, so first you must download the entire Bitcoin blockchain, verify all the incoming transactions, create a block, find a valid nonce, broadcast your block. Finding a valid nonce is the biggest challenge. That is what is a mining algorithm. So if you look at a mining algorithm, you get all the transactions, then you bundle the transactions, calculate the Merkle root, select the header of the most recent block, that is the previous hash value, you take it, add the bundle of transaction, get the Merkle root, and then solve the proof of work problem, find out the nonce. When the solution is there, then you announce it. And once you announce it, there must be at least few people who must confirm it. Then only your block gets added. So that is very important, right? So that's where somewhere you have seen number of confirmations. Till the number of confirmations comes in, you can't add a block, right? So this is the algorithm. I will show you in a slightly bigger way so that you can understand. So this is a bigger version. So you propose a new block, you get the header of the most recent block. Propose a new block means get all the transactions, calculate the Merkle root, get the header of the new block, then get the nonce, right? And then you combine them, take the hash value, check whether it is less than the target value, that is preceding number of zeros, right? So you check whether it is less than the hash value, you compare it, then you also go in determining the target value difficulty, that is modified. Anyway, let's go. Once it is yes, you have the proof of work solved, you get the mining reward. If it is no, you go back and then you find a new nonce and then combine it. So this process continues. It's not the first attempt that you will get a nonce correctly. So this goes on forever. So hence a lot of power is calculated, right? So what you do is you get the target value. So what is happening is a lot of times people are increasing the hardware. People are using earlier CPUs were used, then graphical processing units were used, then ASICs were used. ASIC is application specific integrated circuit. So for this mining application, you create a hardware. Now people have come up with a processor specifically only to do mining. So that is what is called an ASIC, application specific IC, application specific integrated circuit, right? And it increases the speed. So in order to maintain that, you change the difficulty level. And absolutely brilliant idea. I cannot imagine, because it is not happening. There is no human involvement, and nobody is continuously monitoring how many blocks are created, but somebody is counting, keeping track of how much time it is taking, and hence they are making the solving of the proof of work problem difficult. And that is being done on the run, on the fly. Wonderful, right? So that is where you have, so you are ensuring that the average number of blocks per hour can be created. So roughly it adjusts every 2016 blocks in every 2 weeks, and ensure that the blocks mined once every 10 minutes on an average. Sometimes it is 7 minutes, 6 minutes, but again immediately there will be a gap of 20 minutes, 25 minutes, right? So if blocks are created early, the mining difficulty value increases, and once it increases, the difficulty level is maintained. So over a period of time, you get that. This is what I was talking about earlier when Satoshi Nakamoto proposed one CPU should get 1 vote. Right, the power of one CPU will get you one. So people started putting clusters, more CPUs to get more votes, right, or more power. Then they came up with GPUs, which was doing things more faster, or FPGAs, fully programmable gate arrays, right? So and then later you have the ASICs I talked about, right? So when Bitcoin was first released, one could mine 100 Bitcoins in a day using CPUs. Now you have ASICs, and which are highly specialized computers used to mine Bitcoins. Now, ASIC is a microchip specifically designed to execute a hashing algorithm as quickly as possible. ASICs cost a significant amount of money in electricity bills because huge power requirements are there. The cost of the IC is also there anyway, but then a lot of people put together and then put their resources together, put their power consumption together, and then later divide the reward. So that's what is a miner pool, right? People came up with ASIC resistant mining algorithms. Just imagine. So when somebody asked the question in our workshop on quantum computing, if quantum is going to come up, what will happen to blockchain? Then we told about this ASIC resistant mining algorithms. Then quantum resistant mining algorithms will come up. So now who will develop them? So the challenge is to these 100 odd ladies and gentlemen who are listening to my talk, right? Quantum quantum itself is so difficult, quantum physics and then quantum computing, very difficult to digest. Yes, I also understand that. I have listened to the entire presentation twice now, right? Last year also we had quantum computing faculty development program, 10 days, 4 hours every day. And today, this time also we had 10 days, 4 hours every day, and we worked out. So totally, finally, we are having about 40 hours of lecture with us, the content, and it's difficult to digest. But then just understand, if quantum is going to be reality, then blockchain is going to go for a toss. But if blockchain has to be preserved, then you have to come up with quantum resistant mining algorithms. It's a big challenge. So these are questions, sir, these are all beyond, I am not able to understand this. What can we think about the other things? Many times we can say like that and we can leave it and not do anything. But the point is, we need to start somewhere. And if we start doing it, maybe we'll be able to get hands-on. And maybe we'll be able to do some small change. And slowly, results will encourage us. Most of the time, research we leave out because it is very discouraging. Nothing happens and we give up. And most of the time, you would have almost come to the end of the tunnel. But just because you could not go on and you have been exhausted, frustrated, tired, you leave it at the last point. Maybe another 4 or 5 days, the tunnel would have opened. You have started digging like that mining, they dig, going that the tunnel will come, but the tunnel is not coming. Tunnel is not opening. So once the tunnel opens, you'll be so happy that you have made a path, right? It's called path breaking research. But many times we leave it halfway through because we are not able to continue. So these are challenges I would like to encourage you, because listening to these talks will feel a lot of motive. Oh, I understood blockchain, I understood this, I understood that. But till you do something hands-on, use your hands. Hands-on means install yourself, set up yourself, download, understand, read more, and do that. So that is the challenge I wanted to give you. Apart from all the things that I teach today, please remember this, that most of us Indians, we leave it halfway through. So let us pursue it. Let us take it as a challenge. This is something that I'm introducing. I learned it. I gave this problem to an MTech student. He came up with some algorithm, but he didn't publish a paper. So that's okay, fine, no problem. We have learned a lot of things. He has learned a lot of things. He's very thankful that he went through this process. It was very difficult for him also, because no help, no inputs, could not get hold of an ASIC so that we could run it, something like that, and all those things. But then at least we got an idea. We wrote the software. We could not implement and check the values, but at least we could make a proposal, right? And then how to evaluate was not done. But then a lot of these things. So a lot of these machine ASIC resistant algorithms. You have Hashcash, which is Bitcoin's modified version. Proof of stake, which is coming up. Ethereum mining algorithm is coming up. So that is something that you can look at. So ETHASH is the current Ethereum mining algorithm, and then the ASIC resistant mining algorithm. Some of them EQHash and all that. So you can go to GitHub. I think some of you may be aware of GitHub. GitHub has a lot of projects. Maybe you will download it for some project codes or something like that. But then GitHub can also be can also give you a lot of inputs on some of these mining algorithms and some of these ASIC resistant mining algorithms, right? So later we have the new mining algorithm called proof of stake. Proof of stake, the new algorithms, these have come up not even 1 year old now, called Beacon Chain, phase 0, Ethereum 2.0. They use what is called shard chains. Sharding, you would have studied in databases and other things. Maybe you can look at what is shard chains later. So rather than just one blockchain, Ethereum will become 64 blockchains all running in parallel. So you don't have to add only one block, you can add 64 blocks. So what will happen? You can increase the number of transactions Ethereum can handle per second. So what happens? 64 blocks can be created and 64 blocks can be added to 64 blockchains. They're called in shard chains. It's called the Beacon chain. So the mining, so proof of stake. Now what is proof of work? The one who does more work, who gives more proof of his work or more proof of his power, he gets the block. Proof of stake is one who has more stake in the blockchain. The relative value of coins held in the miner's wallet, the length of the time that a miner has held the coins in their wallet. Both these things decide whose block will get added. More stake a user has in the system, the more likely it will want the system to succeed, thus expecting honest behavior. If I have more ethers or more bitcoins, what I will try to do? I will try to be more sincere. Yeah, I think somebody is unmute. Yeah, more stake. Yeah, somebody can be on mute. Yeah, sure. Thank you. More stake a user has in the system, the more likely it will want the system to succeed in honest behavior. So Ethereum is using what is called proof of stake mining, right? And then of course, game theory, as you look at it, this mining algorithm is nothing but game theory. Yeah, I request the others to be on mute. Yeah, are there any questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, no doubts. Yeah, yeah. Please be on mute if you're not, because if you are talking and if you're unmuted, then it will disturb the lecture. Because I'm thinking that you have some doubt or something. Right. Sure. Thank you. So. Yeah. So game theory is a strategic interaction between players involved, each aiming to maximize their payoffs. So these are some. Anyway, I will give this slide so you can take this. Basically, the idea is that the game theory is used in mining algorithm. So how these are some of the things of game theory. So let me come back to this thing. So double spending is the first kind of security attack. Now that we have understood what is blockchain, we're coming to what is the attacks on blockchain. So we can try to look at these aspects. Gillen promised 10 bitcoins to Brian in one transaction, and she promises the same 10 bitcoins to Nadir in another. So two transactions are being made. And both the transactions are being made to two different individuals, and both are being paid 10 bitcoins, the same 10 bitcoins actually. So that's what is called a double spending attack. So successful double spending attack was done. Buyer sends the same coin to two sellers in two different transactions. This is possible if the two blocks, each with one of these conflicted transactions, are mined at the same approximate time, and they go into two different blocks. The two transactions go into two different blocks. If they're in the same block, they cannot, because the Bitcoin is measured and checked. So both cannot be put in the same block. Fortunately, both these transactions go into two different blocks. And it's successful if the seller B sends the services before confirmation of the transaction. This confirmation of the transactions, as I told you, the confirmation happens after 6 or 7 other miners confirm your block that is being added. You are a miner, you do the block, and then you add it to the blockchain. But then 6 or 7 others have to confirm that yes, that is there, and then they go. So miner has a job not only to find out the block, but once he finds out the block and wants to add, somebody else has already added. So what he will do is he will at least verify and say that, okay, is this the same? Okay, is it the same nonce value? Yeah, fine, that's okay. Then he approves it. So like that, if you have 7 people who approve it, then the blockchain becomes. So if you have 7 friends, then you have what is called the 51% attack. You have 7 friends tell that what he has done is correct. So then the job is done, the block is accepted, but the transactions may be faulty. So the idea is that you should not have 7 friends. Before 7 friends say yes, you at least have few friends who will say, few enemies maybe, or few competitors who will say no, it is not correct. I mean, if you have done some malicious thing that is there, right? This double spending attack is successful. Let us say you placed an order, you said I am sending these Bitcoin, and the seller takes the Bitcoin. Immediately before this transaction is verified, before this transaction is added to the block, if you trust the transaction and then immediately release the service may be downloading of software, you permit the download of software, and this fellow started downloading the software, and the download software is downloaded, and after that the transaction is failed. Then the seller B says, "Arey, you are not authorized, you have to return me back the software, but I have already downloaded the software." Then who will talk? Immediately I will disconnect from the internet, and very difficult to trace back, right? So that is what actually happens. So you have to wait for the confirmation. Once the wait of the confirmation, this gets accepted, but seller B, he sees that this transaction is made and is paid in dollars before this this block is accepted. If I send the services and later this gets rejected, then this transaction cannot be retrieved, and you cannot catch hold of the buyer also. And that is where double spending can happen. And it's not easy to do the double spending. It's only timing, and it's only possible when the things are there. Buyer succeeds in double spending only when confirmed transaction to seller A, rejected transaction to seller B, but receives the services. Then only double spending is 51% attack, as I told you, when a single miner or a group of miners attains majority of the network's hash rate. So if they are able to give, they can prevent transactions and the blocks from being verified, reverse the transactions to allow double spending, prevent other miners from finding any other block, and fork the blockchain or split the blockchain. You know, Ethereum Classic has come. It was split from normal Ethereum, right? Can happen when there is centralization by mining pools which acquire more than 50% of the attack, and that's why it's called 51% attack. More than 50%, if you have the power, then you can do that. And it's easy to implement in alternative coins. Alternative coins do not require the huge power. For Bitcoin, you may require the huge power. For Monero, you may require less power. So somebody who is a miner in Bitcoin, if he moves to Monero, it will be easy for him to control and take over the 51% of the attack. It's expensive for Bitcoin and Ethereum because Bitcoin and Ethereum are very famous, and it gets much cheaper quickly for newer Bitcoins. Research demonstrated that it will be quickly as less as what you call 1.5 millions to execute that this thing. So you need about $1.5 million to execute a 51% attack for a $2 billion this thing. So you have the Ethereum Classic, which has this Ethereum Classic and Ethereum are split. There was a forking which was done, so Ethereum suffered a hard fork. Ethereum Classic suffered 51% attack 3 times in August 2020 itself. So attack can be identified by an unusual high rate of orphan blocks. This is a good research area where you can try to find out an attack, and then you can check. You have to look at the threshold, the rate of orphan blocks. How do you stop it? A blockchain Dash uses a secondary validation called chain locks. It prevents block reorganization by making it expensive for attackers. So blockchain Dash does not allow 51% attack because it has a secondary validation called chain locks. Till the chain lock is set, then only the transaction is said to be complete. Now, some people do what is called selfish mining. These are all attacks on blockchain. Selfish mining. What is selfish mining? There is a honest miner who is calculating block n+1, but there is a selfish miner who calculates block n+1, but he is not announcing block n+1. And this fellow, poor fellow, is doing block n+1 and going announcing this is getting verified. Then he is starting for the next block. Meanwhile, this fellow has found out it is block n+1 and immediately coming here, and here it comes here, and blocks n+2 is also mined. Then block n+3 is also mined. Meanwhile, he doesn't announce it, but 3 blocks are created. And later, after some time, while the block n+2 is getting calculated still, he announces all these 3 blocks at the same time. So by the time these people are at the second block, he has announced the 3 blocks. So finally, what happens? This blockchain will become the exact value this block n+1 has to be dumped, because block 2 and block 3, by the time they are calculated, these are all verified. Because these are all verified, this gets dumped, right? So they continue to mine their own private blocks to obtain a chain longer than the public chain. Then they release the private blocks for higher reward. Then all these 3 blocks are reward, and all these 3 blocks reward also they get. And efforts put by honest miners to mine blocks are wasted. That is the effect here. You are not able to see maybe, but what is happening is efforts put by honest miners. These are honest miners. They are mining blocks, but their efforts get wasted. This fellow is selfish, but he gets all the 3 blocks money he gets, and then these people who have done honestly, they lose it, right? There can be DDoS attacks. DDoS, you would have heard from other security teachers also who have taught you. Distributed denial of service attack. So no or minimal adverse effect due to distributed network, but multiple DDoS attacks were launched on competing miners. So miners are doing their hard work, so the miner's network goes down. So he has found the block, but he's not able to add the block, right? So they take them out of the network and increase the malicious miners' effective hash rate. Honest miners waste their time in verifying fake transactions, reducing their chance of mining a block. So because of the responsibility to verify the blocks, there are so many fake transactions which are put in, and that is also another this thing. Network attacks which can happen on blockchain. The goal is to isolate a user from the real network and lead them to a fake attack. It's called the DNS poisoning attack. So what you do, you poison the DNS. DNS is where your addresses are verified. Like if you want to go to mnit.ac.in, actually there is an address, some 202.10. something will be there, but then you actually have mnit.ac.in. So somebody types mnit.ac.in, it comes to DNS server, and DNS server resolves those addresses. So if you can go and sit in the DNS and cache, now some user wants to find out a blockchain network, so he's coming to the DNS, but the attacker has compromised or poisons the DNS cache, so different address is returned. So he thinks he's connecting to the blockchain, but he's actually connecting to another network attacker network. And then this fellow gets a lot of his data from this network, and later uses this on this blockchain, and then he is able to act like this user. So these are some things that can be done. So that is the attack that can happen, right? Then there are Eclipse attacks, which are called a group of malicious nodes. The red color nodes are malicious nodes, white nodes are honest nodes, red nodes are malicious nodes. Now what do they do? A group of malicious nodes isolate the neighboring. No, just imagine how much of thought process is being put in, how much of ideas people are getting, how they are able to manage and control, right? So they change the blockchain view of the honest node, feed them with fake information. It was like these are things which are common in wireless sensor networks or mobile ad hoc networks, MANETs and WSN. You see these attacks, right? Malicious nodes then send fake transactions and blocks to these nodes, and then they are attacked. They also become malicious later. So finally it becomes something like this, right? Everything is malicious. You have privacy attacks. So usually a blockchain network is considered anonymous, as each user is identified by its address only and can generate as many addresses as possible. You can create a lot of aliases, right? So you can one address can be given by, so you can have 5 IP addresses which will point to only single address, something like that, right? So you have 5 alias address, and this 5 alias address can be identified as a single address, right? So that is something that you can try to look at, right? So this is what is. So the blockchain is replicated at each node. Observer can use the transaction history, the blockchain, to find topology of the network, because once you connect to the blockchain, the network details can be picked up by the blockchain. So somebody who is actually browsing the blockchain can actually find out the topology of the network, find out the patterns of your transactions, patterns of your user interactions. This is all available on that network, right? So you can understand where you are making transactions, where your transactions are coming from. At least though they don't know who the individual is, they know that maybe it is coming from India, maybe it's coming from Bangalore or Jaipur, like that. Some kind of data can be obtained. So what they did, so one paper is there which they did. They created how many nodes are there in the Bitcoin. They found out all the geographical location, they got all the network information, and then they got these data like this. So these are where the transactions are happening. So though we don't know who the people are, but they could at least find out how many nodes are there, how many states are having the stake, that kind of information. Just imagine, blockchain is totally private, no information is public, but still this is a kind of a privacy attack. So more people are working in Europe, more people are working in US, more people are working somewhere in China and Hong Kong and other places. So that is something which is coming out very evidently. So this is very easy to identify. So that is something that you can look at. And there are some privacy attacks also which are coming up. So privacy attacks on blockchain. So the transaction network can be developed to study the flow of bitcoins in the network, right? So what is actually happening? The user, there is one user here. The user is sending to here and user is sending to here, and like that there are different transactions which are going on. So what is actually happening? So user network can be developed to study the ownership and spending patterns, right? So where the Bitcoin is originating from, where is some amount is being spent, the remaining amount is going down, some amount is being spent here, the remaining amount is going here, and then you can build an analogy, because it's big data, simple. You download that data, 700 GB or something, and then you create a database, and then you create patterns out of it, and then you can very easily understand the spending patterns, right? At least you don't know who the individual is, but how he is spending, who is spending, to whom is giving the money and all, you can create a story behind that, right? So using transaction patterns and information gathered off the network, an adversary can attempt to de-anonymize the users. De-anonymize means anonymity is maintained, but slowly, if you are trying to build transactions, if you are trying to build locations, if you are trying to build geographical locations based on the IP addresses, based on the network from which they are connecting and all that. So slowly you can build a analysis, and then you can actually find out the actual user. You may not know the name of the user, but you may know at least, okay, this fellow is coming from MNIT or SPUP or other university or some other company. At least you can try to do that by mapping their Bitcoin addresses with their real world entities, making it pseudo anonymous. It may not be fully anonymous. You don't know the name of the individual, but you know that this person is operating from this locality or this geographical location. At least that is something. So you have some kind of privacy issues on that, right? So most of the time, whenever you are paying an vendor who is well known, vendor publishes his public address, and you use the public address and you make a payment, and he uses his private IP or private key and unlocks the transaction, and that's how the transaction completes. But then some of these public IPs of vendors are there, so you know these are vendors and you know their addresses, so you know who is actually buying what items. So you know this address across these things, how many times he has maybe, if the vendor is a commercial company and then he's selling maybe some stocks, or maybe he's selling some financial services, or he's selling some other services. You know, by the services, you know that this address is actually selling this service, right? So something like that, right? And then all input addresses belong to the same user. So sometimes you see these transactions, 5 transactions are coming, and all the 5 transactions are giving to this some amount is being given to this individual, and there's some transaction fee there. So when you look at these 5 transactions are coming to this one person, it is these 5 addresses may be aliases. So now once you know these 5 addresses are aliases of a single individual, you can judge how many transactions he has made, and like that build knowledge, right? So looking at vendors, looking at the individual transactions like that, you can try to count, right? The other aspect is another example of network analysis is there are 4 bitcoins. So there is an original address, you send it to 1 bitcoin, somebody else, but then the remaining 3 are divided like this. Usually sometimes the transactions are like this. So it is 1 plus 3. 3 you send to yourself and 1 you send to somebody else, right? So to avoid that, so what actually happens, you are sending as if you're going to 2 different things. There's a change of address here, but you understand that 3 bitcoins are going to be with him. And similarly, these 3 bitcoins, you are again giving 1 bitcoin to some recipient address, and then again the remaining 2 bitcoins having another change address, but these change address is actually the same address as this. So all change address and original address belong to the same user. So this kind of analysis can also be done, and you can get some more information about the attack. So where these cryptocurrencies can be used, money laundering, illicit activities, the deep web, deep dark web. So maybe if you are interested, you can study Bitcoin's blockchain, how it is used, and working in Tor environments. Tor stands for the onion routing. It is the location where you have what is called deep web and dark web. So maybe some of you can look at, because usually the data, huge amount of data is there on the internet. It is normal above surface. If you look at it is only 10%. The remaining data that is there, 90% of the data is below the sea level, kind of, you can think of. right? Above sea level, you have normal data. Below sea level, you have deep web first and then dark web next. So that is where. So it is irreversible scam activities like tricking people into sending bitcoins and all that, because there is no central agency. It becomes very difficult. So these are all illegal activities can be done. Then you can have theft from the wallet also. Wallet has these keys. Wallet doesn't have symbols for cryptocurrency, right? But it has what is called public and private keys for a blockchain address. So you have a blockchain address and you have some bitcoins in your blockchain wallet. So you have a public key and a private key. Public key is like an address, you announce it. Private key is like a PIN number, you keep it with you, right? So public address is announced and anybody can send money to any public address, but then the person can receive only when he has a private key and then he opens it. The malware attacks can also happen on host computer. It can lead to wallet theft. If the adversary steals the file, they can sign transactions on users' behalf, spending their balance. So this is what is called a wallet attack, right? So then, as I told you, blockchain 2.0 is coming up, and then you have what is called, see, this is where the other aspect of computer science is coming in, and then this is where you have blockchain being used not only for cryptocurrency, but is being used for what is called decentralized applications. They are called smart contracts, right? Yeah, sorry. So the decentralized applications, or they are called DApps. DApps are other than cryptocurrencies. So there are many applications like supply chain management, land registry, and healthcare. Now, if you look at healthcare, the moment a small what do you call pharmaceutical tablet is created, till who consumes it, you can actually track the whole healthcare mechanism. The entire land registry records, if they are placed, because many of the time when you go to a registrar's office, a lot of corruption is there. But if all the land records can be put up on blockchain, nobody can change them, right? So that is how you can, all the transactions can be recorded, and it becomes corruption free, because you can't do anything. But of course, people will find their own ways of trying to get that. But then if it is made like that, so it becomes as transparent as possible. And that is something which, in fact, many of the governments may also not want to do, because it will make it everything transparent, and they don't want full transparency also. So hence the question, it may be educational records also, like many times till you submit your 10th class certificate or some of your graduation certificates, they are verified. Any job, they do that. But just imagine if all the educational records are on blockchain, and they can be publicly viewed, but nobody can make any change. So in that sense, you can share your address and people can browse and people can see your details. They cannot make change, they cannot download, they cannot corrupt it, but they can see it. So that kind of an application, if you can create, it will be a lot great advantage. The major important aspect as we look at is what is called the smart contract. The blockchain 2.0 helps. It is a code that facilitates, verifies, or enforces the negotiation and execution of a digital contract. And why do I want to use digital contract is because blockchain gives trustworthiness. Anything that is put on blockchain is immutable. You cannot make a change, and hence the trusted entity can run this code and manage it. So that's what is that. So Ethereum is one decentralized platform designed to run smart contracts. Of course, blockchain can also be used, but Ethereum is the most popular ones. So the smart contracts in Ethereum react to external world when poked by transactions. They are written in, these transactions can be written in language called Solidity and Viper. Now, these are terms which you would not have heard till date. So please note down these words, Solidity and Viper. And Solidity, you can look at these things where you can read it, solidity.readthedocs.io. So you can go and read the Solidity programming language. It's something like Python. You can read it. Then you have the editors, which are called Remix. Remix is an editor for Solidity. You can open that, and then Visual Studio also, there is extensions for Solidity. So Solidity code looks something like this. Simple coin.sol is a smart contract to mine and send coins of a cryptocurrency. So you have some of these. It's a simple C++ Python kind of code where usually you can easily find out. So this was how it looks like So there were attacks in smart contracts also. Imagine smart contracts are written on blockchain, but smart contracts themselves can be compromised. So this is something which is called reentrancy attacks is one attack, which is attack on smart contract. So recursive calls to call dot value of the smart contract causes what is called the decentralized autonomous organization attack, which happened in Ethereum in 2016. So reentrancy attacks less than 3 months after its launch. So the decentralization what is called autonomous organization was hacked, and $60 million of Ether was stolen, and hence it was a problem on the reentrancy attacks. So contract code with DAO vulnerability and contract code exploiting DAO vulnerability. So you can see some of these codes. So then because of the functions, they get attacked. If the code written in smart contract is not secure, it may lead to some other attacks also called overflow attack. So it doesn't support the values greater than 2 per 256, and hence if you use a value greater than 2 per 256, it becomes having a really large value. So and hence buffer flow attacks can become a reality. Forcible balance transfer, if the contract is vulnerable, forcible balance transfer can be done and limits can be extended. So these things can happen. DOS attacks, smart contract can be written with malicious intent causing denial of service. Then let me introduce Ethereum. I've introduced the shard chains. I've introduced. Now let me introduce one more blockchain called Monero. Monero gives you pseudo anonymity. Of course, maybe it's already heavy. 1.5 hours we have finished, and then we are going to the last part. This is called the privacy preserving blockchain, because I think I mean it would be good if I could split my sessions into 1 hour each, but then I know time is a constraint for you, time is a constraint for me, and that's why as much as is possible I am trying to push you, and please don't worry, I will share all the slides, so don't worry. And there are some papers which I want to share with you also. Government of India has a lot of good resources which are coming up. As I conclude, I will share those content with you, and then also share the material with you through Mr. Arjun Chaudhary, who will share the contents with you. So please read through. Nothing I'm going to lose by sharing all this material with you. This material is all available online, and some of my students are actually working on this area, so they have built up these slides and they keep updating. Now it is more than 100 slides today I'm sharing with you. So you please read through, go through, and find out how it goes. Right? So some enhancements that we look at here. Some of the things that I will show you: stealth and single-use addresses and ring signatures in confidential transactions is what we'll see. So first thing that Monero gives you is what is called stealth addresses. What are stealth addresses? They provide unlinkability. Unlinkability means there is Alice and Bob, and they are giving to Charlie. So there is a kind of a transactions which are created, right? Now what they are trying to do is they are trying to create what is called Charlie will have 2 different addresses, and then Alice will make a transaction to Charlie 1, Bob will make a transaction to Charlie 2. Actually Charlie 1 and Charlie 2 are the same, but they are shown as 2 different transactions. So that is what is called unlinkability, right? Linkability is the problem, but Monero gives you unlinkability. Second thing, a different destination address for each output is derived from one Monero address. Only the owner of the Monero address knows that output is for. Using the view key sequencing, nobody can tell these outputs are going to the same person. So that is something that. The next aspect is untraceability. Untraceability in the sense it provides traceability. So there are 3 addresses which are sending to some addresses which are sending to Charlie's address file. So what I try to do is, instead of showing those 3 addresses are sending to some addresses, they are combining and sending to some addresses. Finally, you know that ABC are being given to Charlie, right? So now what happens? These 3 transactions, instead of linking to these some addresses, they are independently linked one by one. So that provides untraceability. Traceability is the ability to trace funds held by the same person by analyzing transaction data. Now Monero provides untraceability by using ring signature. So untraceability, how is it coming? So let us understand what is ring signature. Ring signature inputs in a transaction at least one real participant and other mix-ins. What is mix-in? Mix-in are dummy transactions. Mix-ins are output from some previous transactions. Ring signature is created to sign the transaction. So for a viewer, for a verifier, no way to tell who is the real participants. All appear to be valid, right? So here, 3 people are signing and 3 people are receiving. So find some outputs in the blockchain with the same amount X as the output A you want to spend. These other outputs are called mixins. All mixins are of same value. You can use 4 to 25 mixins in a transaction. You sign this transaction using a ring signature. So this is what happens. So you sign 3 and then it's hard to verify that at least one user from outputs have inputs have signed this ring transaction. No way to find out which user has signed the transaction. So here you see the diagram, mixin 1 and real input is there, mixin 2, mixin 3, 3 mixins they add, and finally you have what is called a ring signature, and then you get only the output 0. So this is the real transaction output O, maybe you can talk about. Verifier cannot know that the output O is the real spender in the left. So to take it further, Monero transactions goes into provide anonymity. So it hides these values, hides these addresses also. They use what is called hides the transaction amount, hides the addresses. They use what is called bulletproof technology. What is bulletproof technology? They use what is called Pedersen commitment. Of course, maybe I will not be able to really cover most of these things, but anyway, please read through papers on Pedersen commitment, or please read on confidentiality in Monero, which has been created. There is an open source, open website which deals with all these information, and you can try to do that. So that is what is a Pedersen commitment. So Pedersen commitment solves for a problem commit of x colon h, which is g power x h power r. That kind of relation has to be created, and then it is sum of inputs is greater than or equal to sum of outputs. So output should be positive. So you have a Pedersen commitment value which is dependent on values xr and xr, which is applied to g and h also, right? So transaction amounts are hidden, transaction graph is still public. So the public ledger is maintained, but the values are very cryptic in nature, right? So they use what is called zero knowledge proof of knowledge. So proof of knowledge is that. So Peggy sends one value and Victor sends through it. Peggy sends or Victor sends a challenge and Peggy sends a response. And finally, Peggy gives a value x, and x is what Victor has to identify, and x may not be found out from this equation. So that's called zero knowledge proof of knowledge. In the sense, you are passing zero knowledge, but you're actually sending knowledge. So zero knowledge proof of knowledge, and then it's also called non-interactive zero knowledge proof of knowledge. This was interactive, where multiple values were sent and received. Here you sent only 2 values, and then she can calculate what is expected of her. So you get non-interactive zero knowledge NIZK proof of knowledge, this thing. So let me stop here because I think it will be heavy, and yes, I will stop sharing my screen also. Then there are 15 minutes left if there are any questions. Meanwhile, let me just open up some documents which I would like to share with you, which I'll give you along with the slides, with these slides. So we will share that document with you, right? So meanwhile, you can suggest that they are available on the slide itself. So let me share the first one, that is Blockchain India strategy. Okay, this is one aspect. Are you able to see this?
Yes,
Niti Aayog. Yeah, Niti Aayog has come up with a blockchain India strategy paper. So this is almost 1.5 years old, January 2020. So please look at this paper. This is what the Indian government wants us to use, how blockchain can be used, and it's a strategy paper, how it can be used and what we must be doing. Not only cryptocurrency, but there are some challenges in blockchain implementation, challenges blockchain users. We can take it forward. And this appears to be a little old, but there are other aspects as we look at. the second paper that I wanted to share with. Let me just open that. This is more latest. Okay. Yeah, hope you are able to see National Strategy on Blockchain. This is published by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. You can just directly get it on the internet straight away. There is absolutely no problem. January 2021. So please read this. These are also few 50 pages in all. Then you can read about the blockchain strategic aspects that they are trying to do. One paper that I would like to recommend is Attack Surfaces. Yeah, this is a survey paper. So the survey paper, you can read it. This is published in IEEE Communication Surveys and Tutorial, exploring the attack surface of blockchain, a systematic overview. A lot of attacks of blockchain are discussed, and of course, the blockchain is not introduced, is assumed. So a lot of attacks that have happened and all that is discussed here. So you can read this paper as well. Right. So I will share these information and the slides with you. So and you can try to look at that. Yeah, so I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, sir. And I would request all the participants here to put your queries to the specifically Professor Pillai, sir. And I think this was an amazing session in the field of blockchain here. And sir has been indulged in the research activities for a very long time. He has vast experience in teaching and research. So, my request to all of the participants, if you can put your query in a very layman manner or whatever you feel so, sir will be happy to help you out with. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And Santosh has sir mentioned that very nice, informative, interactive sessions. Sir. Thank you very much, sir. Bilal Ahmed has mentioned amazing sessions, sir. Thanks a lot. One question is there, sir, from Deepak Mishra. Sir, is there a provision to convert Bitcoin to Indian currency or US dollars?
Yeah, you can go to a Bitcoin exchange, and then if you can have a wallet also with any Bitcoin exchange, you can pay in rupees and you can get the Bitcoins. You can send the Bitcoins and receive in, or you can sell the Bitcoins and receive in Indian rupees. Very easy conversion these days, absolutely no problem. Surprising to find Jaipur has 4 or 5 Bitcoin exchanges. I was in a television interview with Rajasthan Patrika, a television channel here, and we were discussing Bitcoins and the pitfalls and the problems. Should we invest? Should we not invest? But they were all very much keen on asking people to invest, because that's a business for them. They are not worried about the pitfalls or the problems. Presently, there is a good stock. Today it is 13 lakhs. Tomorrow it is going to be 40 lakhs. Please invest the money, because if you invest the money, we will get money. So that was what they were looking at. And I was surprised to find that there are so many companies and so many exchanges right in India. You can just go and search Bitcoin exchanges in India. City wise, you will see so many Bitcoin exchanges. So it's very easy. Yeah, there are I don't know which is authentic, but there are quite some popular ones, because I myself out of academic interest only, but this thing. So you can just check. Maybe I can send to Arjun once I speak to my friends who are there from Jaipur itself. They were some people who are running these exchanges. I can find out, and then I can definitely tell you. I will share it with Arjun, who will, in course of this course being completed, he will share with you.
Yes, sir. I will definitely share with all the participants here. Can you please suggest a few authentic ones? Yes, absolutely, sir. You mentioned. And Anu Prerna Sharma has mentioned that every topic is excellently explained, sir. And then I believe, sir, and I will always believe that yes, you are the very right person to discuss the blockchain. And sir, one question from my side, if you would allow me to ask that.
Sure, please.
Sir, like right now, we are seeing that there are a lot of people who are indulged in fraudulent activities, for the ransomware purposes, for some like Upper and any other crime activities. They ask Bitcoin for that to be untraceable in the manner. And nowadays there are a lot of cryptocurrencies which are into the market. And what is the basic issue the police is currently facing, that how to forensically examine those particular evidences? Probably they may carry out the coins in terms of like a pen drive or a mobile phone itself. Do we have some certain standardized tools to examine those things so that we can put into the code of law? Because as per the Evidence Act also, we need to provide the complete information so that it can be a full-fledged case, so that we can lodge a complaint and the crime against a particular person.
Yeah, actually presently there is no mechanism to track, because it is all not under a centralized entity, and it is also difficult for us to invest time. So unless and until there is an individual who is able to spend a lot of time, then only we will be able to do this analysis and keep track. You must completely be dedicated to that research, so then you can do that. But I am working in multiple domains, so one of the student is actually focused on this. So, and hence the time is not there to actually do the and recently, for your question on Bitcoin forensics, there is recently a paper on Bitcoin forensics. I will share it with you, Arjun, so you can go through and try to understand how it goes. Because as of now, security itself, when I was in one presentation I was making in IIT Bombay, many of the senior faculty who were there made a lot of fun. Nothing can happen with blockchain. There cannot be any security attacks in blockchain and all. But over a period of time, they had to agree to my question. I said, sir, anything can be attacked, and any important resource will always be targeted. So if there is money somewhere, it will definitely be attacked. That was my premise, right? And then I was proved right in that sense. So sometimes we need that huge resource that is needed, and if you have that resource, then we'll be able to do it. If you are looking at it, yeah, we should start somewhere. I understand. Right. So maybe the next, maybe in couple of months, maybe let us see if we can work out the forensic investigation mechanism for Bitcoin. Because recently, I think a month ago, a paper has come. So interest is generated on forensic investigation, cyber investigation. If somebody steals a wallet, if somebody steals the Bitcoins, how do I return back? And now the other aspect is there are so many currencies. Now if people can start stealing different, so how many technologies will you be mastering before you can do that? But then yes, the challenge is there, and as things become more understandable and more accessible, people will do it. So the challenge for all of you 100 people here is this, that you try to understand the mechanism and understand how the culture is going on, and then see how you can take it forward. So I wish you all the best, and then thank you for this time. Yeah. Any more questions we can?
I would request all the participants to switch on their cameras so that we can have a group photograph here, and it could be sent to the newspapers as well, so that we can have a media coverage from this wonderful session that is floated right now. Thank you so much, sir. It's an honor to have you here as a speaker and a mentor for all of us here. Because sir, this was again a very important and need of our topic, which is related to the cybersecurity domain itself. And then believe me, sir, people would use the Bitcoins without keeping the security aspects or the privacy aspects, just to earn out of it, get rich out of it, and have some shortcut money out of it. Thank you, sir, once again for your time and effort, sir. I would request all the participants to please put on your camera so that we can have a group photograph, please. So just 2 minutes, and then we'll be the session. Please, all the participants, I hope everyone is listening to me, and we'll have a group photograph here. All the respective participants. Yes, some of them are coming right now. Sir, I would be really happy if we can do some research projects over the same topic, sir. It would be an honor because, you know, it's a learning process and we always learn something from you. Like very recently, like NFT was into the news for a very long time. And again, it's a new topic for me as well. Sir. Participants, please requesting you, like there are only 5 or 6 participants who have opened their cameras so that we can have a very good photograph. You know, this is a good time. This is morning only. Not everyone would be feeling sleepy here. This is only the breakfast and on the ma'am has mentioned that having network issues, but what about others? Shall I call by name everyone? Please request from all of you that we can have a photograph here. The research scholars, the faculty members, please put on your camera. Thank you. So I'll be having one photograph here. One, two,
It's okay.
three.
It's okay, Arjun. I think they may be having
Sir,
some
thank you
issues.
so much,
Maybe
sir.
you can.
Once again, sir, it's a pleasure, sir. It's an honor to be here, sir. And we request you to please send us some guidance regarding this particular session, sir.
Sure.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
send you the material also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Have a nice day, sir. Bye-bye, sir. Thank you, sir. Participants, the next session would be initiated by, sir has left now. I would request all of you to please put on your mic and as well, like the next session would be starting very soon. So I would request all of you to join by 11:45. Till then, you're free to have some tea or snacks at your respective places. Although like this session would have been in offline mode, definitely would have taken some tea or snacks here all together. But this is the online mode, so would request you to please have the tea snacks at your respective ends. Okay. So we'll start by 11:45. Okay. Thank you all of you. And the session, please note down. The session link is different now. So for every session, there will be different link. And I would request again 711 is that one person whose name is 711. You please change your name as soon as possible because your report will be coming down as a 711 and I won't be able to identify who the person is, he or she is. So 711, please use that thing and you don't have audio. So please do that thing. I would request you again. 711. Okay. So I'll be just completing this meeting right now, and we will join back by 11:45 on some different link itself, which has been already shared with all of you. Okay. Thank you. Any questions, any queries from the participant side would be much appreciated. Anyone?
So feedback link and attendance link will be circulated in the WhatsApp group. So kindly fill it as soon as possible. After 1 hour, it will be removed. Thank you so much.